This is Dale Wetzel. This is the Legislature Today radio program. This hour of our program is sponsored by the North Dakota Ethanol Council. We have with us Mr. Jeff Zuger, the General Manager of Blue Flint Ethanol in Underwood, North Dakota. He is the Chairman of the North Dakota Ethanol Council. We also have Dina Weezy, the Executive Director of the North Dakota Ethanol Council. And on the telephone, we have Mr. Rich Kreger, who is the head of the Advanced Transportation Technologies Department at Wilson Community College. Performance and energy value of flex fuel, and you were talking about that. Brush up on how ethanol blended fuel compares to gasoline.
Well, again, what I was talking about was compression ratios, and to put it as simply as I can, a gasoline engine is about 25 to 30% efficient, which means that for every 100 gallons of fuel that you pay for, at best about 30 gallons of that fuel actually does something for you, whether it pushes you down the road or keeps your air conditioner going or makes your wipers go back and forth. The rest of that energy, 70%, 70 gallons of every 100 gallons of fuel that you buy, you're just basically throwing away. It's being wasted as heat. Diesel engines are quite a bit more efficient, and of every 100 gallons of diesel fuel that you buy, maybe only 55 or 60 gallons is being wasted, and you're getting useful work out of about 40 gallons or 40%. And ethanol kind of bridges those two technologies. Ethanol gets us above the 30% efficiency level, closer to the 40% level of diesel, and I believe that within maybe 5 years, 10 at the most, ethanol will probably match the efficiency of the diesel engine with far fewer problems in terms of emissions and pollution and so forth. So that's really good, exciting news about ethanol today. And this is really just breaking news. I mean, these technologies are just coming out of the engineering studios at the manufacturers, but they are coming out, they are happening, and they are going to be in the market.
You mentioned increased engine efficiencies that you see in the future, 25 to 40% more efficient engines that can run on flex fuel and ethanol. How difficult is it to come up with technological advances such as these? I must say, sir, when you said that 70% of the gasoline I buy is being wasted, I thought, my goodness, isn't there? How much room for improvement is there?
A lot of people have thought about that a lot, and the general consensus among engineers is that to get above 55 or 60% would really be difficult. Theoretically, because engines require a heat sink. Engines require areas of different temperatures and different energy levels in order to function. We're probably never going to get anything more than about 60% efficient in an internal combustion engine. Now, an electric motor is a different story, but 60% is probably about it. But there are also, some engineers out there that think we can get darn close to it.
Sir, one of the things that I was wondering about when I was talking to you about where you're located, to what extent is ethanol fuel available where you are in North Carolina, and how popular is it?
Unfortunately, I only have about 5 ethanol stations, flex fuel stations. Every gas station in North Carolina has 10% ethanol coming out of its pumps, but I can only buy flex fuel at about 5 different stations within a 50-mile radius of my house. So we're lacking, sadly, in that area here. Now, let me say that I'm an Iowan. I've only been down here about 12 years, so I'm from Mount Vernon, Iowa, and it's a whole different story back home up there.
Yeah, how popular is? Aside from, you mentioned that there apparently is a requirement that there be a 10% ethanol blend in fuel in North Carolina. How popular is it for folks to go beyond that?
Well, the stations that I'm familiar with that offer flex fuel are selling flex fuels. We have a lot of flex fuel vehicles here. We have good. I don't have the exact count, but I see them all the time. I don't think a day goes by when I don't see a vehicle in front of me on the highway that has a little flex fuel badge on the rear. So the vehicles are here. It's just that we're a little shy on the number of places where we can buy the fuel.
Does the NASCAR sponsorship of a ethanol car, so to speak, does that help raise awareness of flex fuel and increase its popularity, to your knowledge?
To my knowledge, absolutely. It's a great gain for ethanol, and of course the argument that the ethanol industry makes, which I think is a really cool argument, is that NASCAR owes its origins to ethanol in the first place.
Yes, it does.
Because we were down here running the revenuers with our ethanol fueled hot rods. So it's good to be back to it.
All right. Sir, to what extent do you see in the future an ethanol-powered vehicle, and I guess a flex fuel-powered vehicle, say 85% E85, an E85 vehicle, 85% ethanol? To what extent do you think that engine technology will be sufficiently advanced to make it as efficient? You get the same kind of mileage out of it than you would out of a gasoline-powered engine?
Well, I'm going to up the stakes on you a little bit, and I'm going to talk about, even above gasoline efficiencies, I'm going to talk about diesel efficiencies. Watch carefully for the term Bobcat, or the Bobcat project, as it comes out of Ford Motor Company, because this is the name they've given to their flex fuel EcoBoost engine program. The diesel engine is under a lot of pressure globally, but especially in the United States, for two reasons. First of all, there's the cost differential between diesel and gasoline, and secondly, the maintenance costs that we are seeing in keeping the myriad and complex amount of emission equipment operating properly that diesel engines are required to have now to meet Tier 3 and Tier 4 emission standards are really, really adding to the cost of operating the diesel engine and putting it under a lot of economic pressure. And the two competitors that I see moving in on the diesel market, and by the diesel market I mean the trucking industry, and I mean the off-road industry, and I mean even the locomotive and marine industry, because all of these engines now are subject to federal emission standards that are extremely tight. I see the compressed natural gas market competing with the diesel, but I also see, as these engines develop, and I'm gonna say within a 5 to 10 year time frame, I see the flex fuel based engine being able to compete directly with the diesel in terms of torque and in terms of horsepower, without any of these complex emission devices to keep the tailpipe clean. And I think that's a really, really exciting development, and it's really going to be fun to watch. But pay particular attention. And I have to say, and I drive a Volt, so I'm not a Ford guy necessarily, but Ford Motor Company has to get a lot of credit for spearheading these engineering developments. And their main thrust of this is their Bobcat engine project. So keep an eye on it. It
was pleasing to hear the name Bobcat Project, because the Bobcat up in North Dakota is a brand for heavy equipment. It's a heavy equipment manufacturer, and it's a well-known name in North Dakota. Sir, are we going to reach the point in automotive manufacture that all new vehicles are flex fuel vehicles, or have we reached that point already?
Well, we've not reached that point already, and there are so many factors involved in that, including political factors. The flex fuel vehicle got its impetus from the CAFE credit system that was created, again, back in the 90s by Congress. And that's just something that I would need a crystal ball to predict, and I don't have my crystal ball with me tonight.
The one of the things that you mentioned or alluded to earlier is the role of flex fuel vehicles in meeting the federal government's higher fuel efficiency standards for vehicles in the future. Are flex fuel vehicles going to be, in your opinion, in the vanguard of doing that, and is that going to make ethanol a more even a more prominent fuel source than it already is?
Yeah, I don't think there's any argument about that. And the thing is, we had to. There's the food fuel argument about using corn and food crops to make ethanol fuel, but we had to go through that to get where we are today. And where we are today is first of all, having enough of these vehicles on the road and enough gallonage going into these vehicles to drive the automakers into spending research money on ethanol fuel, but also to on the fuel side to drive the research to develop future forms of ethanol. And that, of course, is the golden goose, which is cellulosic ethanol, where and we can already do this. We just haven't figured out how to do it on a cost-effective basis, where you can take corn stover, which is something that otherwise you would just leave laying out on the cornfield, and we can convert that corn stover. We can convert wood waste, yard clippings, just about anything with cellulosic mass into the sugars that will produce ethanol for us. And again, we had to go through the developmental stages that we've now been through to get where we are. But I think we've peaked. That we've got to the top of that roller coaster, and I think we're finally on the way down. And the way down is definitely going to be ethanol is going to be a big part of our energy solutions. I like to say there is no silver bullet to our energy problems, but there's lots of bronze buckshot. And ethanol is certainly in that mix. And as long as we're importing 1 gallon of fuel of petroleum from another country, there is a need for ethanol, as there is a need for natural gas, as there is a need for biodiesel, and all the other, and electricity, and all the other stuff that we can put into our transportation mix.
Sir, you mentioned the relative rarity of flex fuel pumps in North Carolina, and I think that's the situation in most of the nation. Do you have any ideas about how to change that situation and make flex fuel pumps and the availability of flex fuel more prevalent in places where it is not presently?
Well, to my way of seeing things, the way if you build it, they will come. Let's get these flex fuel vehicles that are going to run much more efficiently on flex fuel than on gasoline. Let's get these vehicles on the market and out in the hands of consumers, who will then demand the flex fuel. And once I think they're demanding the flex fuel, the petroleum companies and the gas stations are going to comply with those demands and make it available. And that's how I see it happening.
And when do you think that we will reach this point where that will happen? How long a time are we talking about here?
Well, I really think that a 5 to 10 year time frame is very reasonable. As a matter of fact, I think 10 years is probably very conservative. I really believe that. Because again, this 52.5 CAFE standard is such a sword hanging over the automakers' heads that they're scrambling to comply with it, and they know that ethanol is going to be a big part of that solution. They got to improve fuel economy by about 6% a year to make it, and as of right now, we're not even halfway there. So this is a huge issue with the automakers, and they're taking it very seriously.
Mr. Zuger and Ms. Weezy, is this something, frankly, that you're banking on in the long term for the ethanol industry, for there to be these engine improvements, the pressure that's put on by increased increased auto efficiency standards, and it increasing the demand for ethanol generally, and also for greater ethanol fuel blends?
Yeah, when we as a nation put in place the renewable fuels standard, which called for 36 billion gallons of renewable-based fuel by 2022, there was a long-range vision of getting to higher-level blends, and we've just struggled as a nation to put in place the infrastructure. But I think the time is now. There are flex fuel vehicles in large numbers out on the roads. They're becoming a larger and larger percentage of the vehicles that are being driven. We're ready for E15. EPA's approved E15, so we need to get infrastructure in place because the demand is there for the product. The higher level blends, the more folks that become aware through dialogue such as this around the fact that they have a flex fuel vehicle, it's safe to use flexible fuel in that vehicle, the more people are going to start demanding that fuel because of the advantages of the fuel. So I think we're a leader in the nation in blender pumps or flex fuel pumps here in North Dakota, but I'd like to see that throughout the nation, and I think that will perpetuate additional growth of people wanting to buy those fuels.
I think what Rich and Jeff both touched on was the consumer's realization that they have a flex fuel vehicle. We all see them on the roads. The percentage that are actually filling with flex fuel, we have several efforts going on to increase that number, because the understanding of what a flex fuel vehicle is, the fuel that it can use, and the benefits of using that fuel in those engines. There's a lot of education work that needs to surround that as well.
How are you trying to carry that out presently?
We currently have a marketing campaign going on directed right at flex fuel vehicle owners. We're communicating directly with them. That's a partnership between the Ethanol Council as well as the North Dakota Corn Council too. So we're trying to communicate with them directly, as well as through the retailers that have installed the flex fuel pumps, doing marketing to them that way, as well as working with the auto dealerships across North Dakota to have them let consumers know the types of vehicles that are available.
Can the DOT, the North Dakota Department of Transportation, give you a list of folks who own flex fuel vehicles?
No, they can't divulge that information. So.
Yeah, you have to obtain those lists through private resources that specialize in trying to gather that type of data.
Okay. Mr. Kreger, to what extent does this trend toward greater ethanol blends and greater engine efficiency, how does this affect what kind of fuel you can use in a lawnmower or a snowmobile or something that is not a big engine?
Well, at the present time, lawnmowers and snowmobile engines and marine engines are using a lot of plastic. And as I said, ethanol will corrode. It'll attack plastic. It'll soften it. So ethanol is not a suitable fuel for those engines as they're being made today. But those engines, if we were to go to a infrastructure where ethanol was everywhere, which actually in North Carolina it is at the 10% level, the manufacturers, of course, can modify that equipment just like they've modified automobiles to be ethanol resistant. It's simply a matter really of getting rid of the plastic and the natural rubber and some of the aluminum engine parts that would come in contact with the fuel. So today, if you've got a lawnmower, you sure don't want to put flex fuel in it, but that can change. We can evolve out of those situations. I don't see those as an obstacle at all.
I mean, is that a difficult technological problem to, say, design a lawnmower engine or a snowmobile or a boat motor that can run on E85 or some sort of higher ethanol blend?
No, it is not.
Okay.
It's more of a materials problem than a design problem.
What do you see as the future for flex fuel vehicles generally? Where do you think that the manufacturing trends are going?
Well, I think the manufacturing trends are going to increased production of ethanol vehicles. As a matter of fact, I believe most of the major manufacturers have already made that pledge. And as I've said, this is being driven by their need to drastically improve fuel economy, and also their need to get, you've noticed, 4 or 5 years ago, if you were watching commercials, automobile commercials and light truck commercials on TV, fuel economy wasn't discussed. Fuel economy wasn't touted. Maybe on some cars, some very specific cars it was, but you didn't see every automaker touting fuel economy with every vehicle, and that's changed. Now you do. Now you've got Ram out there talking about their 25 mile per gallon light duty pickup. You've got Ford talking about their EcoBoost. You've got GM talking about how their Silverado is better than both Ford and Ram in terms of fuel economy. So this has been a sea change in the marketing outlook of the manufacturers, and of course that's going to drive consumer opinion and consumer desire. And so it really is a new world out there for transportation in that we finally got over that hump where guzzling gas is no longer desirable.
To what extent do you think that we have already an adequate ethanol supply in this country? Where do you see the supply side of ethanol going?
That's probably something I'm really not the best person to answer. I'm the techie guy, and I can tell you all about the fuel and technology once it gets into the vehicle. But
that's all right. We have Mr. Zuger here. He can answer that question.
Sure. I'd be glad to. Actually, we've got about just under 15 billion gallons of ethanol production capacity now, which is mostly traditional or cornstarch-based ethanol production capacity. There's becoming an evolution of what would be advanced feedstock. So sorghum it has qualified as an advanced feedstock, which means it has 50% the life cycle greenhouse gas intensity of gasoline as compared with 20% conventional. And then we're starting to see these cellulosic technologies evolving beyond kind of pilot scale into larger scale. In 2014, we'll see millions of gallons of cellulosic ethanol start to become into production and being produced at competitive rates such that it'll have a spot in the fuel supply stream. And we're going to work towards that 36 million gallons called for in the renewable fuel standard. We'll get there.
One of the things that's been notable recently is, first of all, prices of corn have been high until the recent USDA report that caused the price of corn to go down. What do you see as the trends there and your ability to continue to make ethanol in a way that you can make money at it?
Sure. Well, even at the elevated corn prices that we've seen here in 2012, because of the drought situation that we had that had a devastating effect on this last year's corn crop, ethanol was still lower priced to produce than gasoline throughout the entire year. As much as $1 cheaper per gallon at times, and average probably about 60 to 70 cents cheaper per gallon than gasoline during these elevated corn prices. So the good news is we can only get better even from here as corn prices come down. So it is a very competitive fuel, even at the elevated prices. And when we look at the projections that are projected for corn production this year, you can't have drought year over year.
Ms. Weezy, do you have any thoughts to offer about the ethanol trends?
No, just that, at a time when plants across the nation are slowing down or closing, ours are continuing to produce and bringing more online into the future. So
we've been speaking to Dina Weezy. She's the executive director of the North Dakota Ethanol Council. She's the person whose voice you just heard. We've also been speaking to Jeff Zuger, the general manager of Blue Flint Ethanol in Underwood, North Dakota, and chairman of the North Dakota Ethanol Council. And on the telephone, we've had Mr. Rich Kreger, the head of the Advanced Transportation Technologies Department at Wilson Community College in Wilson, North Carolina, and a gentleman who is from Iowa. Thank you for your time, Mr. Kreger. Thank you, Mr. Zuger and Ms. Weezy. This has been the Legislature Today radio show. My name is Dale Wetzel, and have a good evening.